Okay, this is the last test for COMS 5073. Yay. So number one asks, why is this article important and what is the purpose of this article? Well, this article is important because if you remember, this article is from 1968, meaning that it's from a time when many people's philosophy for teaching deaf or hard of hearing children was oral. It's from a time when many people said, don't sign. It'll hurt your kid. They can't use speech or lip read if you do that. And this article showed, hey, wait, that's wrong. That's a misconception. Maybe we need to change the way we're teaching or the way we're parenting. The article also shows that early experience with manual communication is really important. That's important for us as teachers of deaf and hard of hearing children, because we tell parents that. We say, sign early. It's so important. Please sign with your kid. And now, in 1968, we were able to say, look, this article shows signing early is really important. So please sign with your kid. So really, this article is important because it changed a philosophy. It changed the way we raise or teach children. The purpose of this article or study was to find, does exposure to early manual communication have effects on a child's, on their life, social or their language? Does manual communication change their future, and how? Number two, the population used in this study were all from California's School for the Deaf in 1966. 59 deaf students with deaf parents and 59 deaf students with hearing parents were compared. The researchers really tried to keep a one-to-one comparison, meaning they wanted each comparison to be very similar. So they compared age, gender, IQ, family size, and if a student had hearing abilities. They even removed groups. If a student had deaf brother or a deaf sister, they removed minority groups, deaf plus. If a student became deaf after 2 years of age, and if their deafness originated with their mother having rubella or anorexia. So why would researchers want to do this? Why would they remove groups and compare so strictly? Well, if they're saying that the only difference between this student and this student is exposure to manual communication, then they must prove that that is the only difference. If I, as a reader, can look at this article and say, well, that student had exposure, their sister is deaf, then that's a problem. To show that the only difference was manual communication, they had to prove that all other aspects of that student and that student's life were very similar, if not the same. So, number 3, I'm going to be talking about 4 statements in the article and why they're important or how they affect deaf and hard of hearing children in our classrooms. Statement number 1 tells us that the results suggest that the only inherent problem with a person who is deaf is simply that they are only deaf. They can't hear their environment. That's all. There's not another disability. There's not another learning problem. Now, there can be, but it's not connected with them being deaf. Deaf is can't hear. That's all. So in classrooms, we as teachers need to remember that my student is simply deaf. That's all. Now, if another problem is shown, then I try to help that problem. But if I have a deaf student, and that's all, no other ID, then I need to understand that they only can't hear. Statement number 2 tells us that we need to look into other happenings in that child's life so we can find differences. We need to understand that all children are different, and that includes deaf students. All our students are different. Maybe their environment, maybe their social abilities, maybe their learning abilities, all things have an effect on our students. And so we need to understand that even if our student is deaf, they are different than another deaf student. It is also important to understand that this will affect our students' language. Different happenings in their lives will have an impact. If our student didn't have language experience until 1 year old or 2 years old, then we need to understand that our students can have problems or language difficulties. So we do need to look into the happenings of our students' lives so we can better help them. Statement number 3, I talked about a little bit before, but it says that there is no support for the opinion that manual communication is detrimental to our children, and it doesn't hinder or stop lip reading skills or speech skills. I said before, this article is from a time when many people believed that the only way to teach a deaf child lip reading or speech was or language was oral, and this article showed and proved that's not true. That's a misconception. If it's ASL or an English sign system, our students need to know, and our parents need to know, that signing is important. Statement number 4 says that in the article there is evidence to show that if a student has experience with oral and sign early, then their language is more developed. That's great to know for students and teachers. In our classrooms and in the student's home, we can tell parents or our bosses that oral and sign are important. It helps our students' language develop and lets them become more successful. The last question asks, what are the implications for our students in ASL or in a sign system? Well, this article shows us that it really shows the importance of using the manual communication, that it helps our students become more successful. It helps their language develop, that it's a positive, that it's not a negative, it's not something that we can't prove to parents or our boss. It's important to the success of our classroom. If our students can have early experience or exposure to manual communication and oral, like the article said, it's great. It's important. It's needed.